In 2017, Korg released the Monologue, a 2 VCO analog synth with built-in keyboard and sequencer. Its big selling point at the time was its microtuning capability, which allowed you to create your own unique tunings and scales. I've played it at shows, I've used it extensively in the studio, it's one of my favorite instruments. But if someone asked me today, should they buy a Monologue? It's not an easy answer, just by virtue of the fact that there are so many good options now. So that's the question for today's video. Is this just a toy for adults, or is it actually a really awesome instrument? Welcome to Trial by Synth. Really simple, straightforward. VCO1 has a sawtooth, square, triangle. Now each of these has a special shape parameter. For the square wave, it becomes pulse width modulation. There's also the triangle, which kind of like folds the shape. By the way, you can always see what's happening with the waveform in this nifty little window here on the side. And the saw wave also kind of folds it in, pulse width, moves it. It's somewhere in between those two. Check it out. VCO2 has a sawtooth, a triangle, but instead of the square, it has a noise generator. The other thing that makes this synth really special, where it shines the most, is when you put VCO2 in ring mod mode. Now, ring modulation, if you're not familiar, that's where you take two signals, you both sum them together, and then you also find the difference between them and add that to that sum. It sounds kind of weird when I explain it like that. All you need to know is that it's just another really cool tonal shaping tool that will basically allow your oscillators to interact and make more interesting combinations of sound. So let's put it in ring mod mode. I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about. There's also a sync mode, which will then take VCO2 and sync it to VCO1. Next up, of course, we have our filter. This is a 12 decibel slope filter. It has just a different tonal quality to it. I'm used to it, but I'm not sure I love it. The resonance is nice. It goes up pretty far. It becomes self-oscillating. I find that if I put it around here, it makes sweeps really fun. For the amp envelope section, it's a little bit odd because it's simplified. We only have attack and decay, and instead of sustain or release, we have these different modes. First mode is pluck mode. Doesn't matter how long I hold the key for, it's just gonna follow the shape of the attack and the decay, and then it's gonna be over. Second mode is our sustain mode. It's basically just gonna follow the curve of the attack, then it's gonna hold sustain at 100%, and then it's gonna follow the curve of the decay when you let go. And finally, we have this kind of odd organ mode where attack is 0, decay is 0, and sustain is at 100%. The reason why we would use this is it frees up our attack and decay shapes to be used to modulate other elements on the synth. The three things that you can modulate are the pitch of oscillator 1, oscillator 2, and the cutoff filter. The LFO has 3 modes. We can either go fast, slow, or one shot, which will then essentially turn it into an envelope again because it will just follow the shape of the LFO once and then quit forever. We can only point the LFO at either both oscillators at once, both shape knobs at once, or the cutoff filter. I wish this could be pointed at more things, but you got to work with what you got. So first we're going to affect the pitch. Woo. We can also affect the shape. Put it on ring modulate. The sequencer only has 16 steps, but it has 3 lanes of steps. So what I mean by that is we have our 16 notes up top. Scroll down, we have our slide page. So we can pick certain notes to slide into others. Very useful for making acid. And then the final page, the most powerful, is our motion page. This page allows us to program in changes on different parameters to occur during the sequence. And we can either do it stepped or we can do it live, where we just hit record and just play with the knobs and just create these fluid movements throughout. Let's hear what it sounds like if I plug in a bunch of little sequence stepped moves. So I just programmed in a bunch of little random knob tweaks. It's going to be jumping around these different parameters as it shuffles through our notes. Let's hear what that sounds like. Yes! Yes! Now, to be honest, y'all, I really thought I was gonna use this microtuning capability and I was gonna completely change the game. No one was gonna sound like me because I was gonna create all these sweet scales. And in reality, it's so hard to make your own scale, your own tuning. However, the Aphex Twin tunings that come with this synth are awesome. If you're a fan of Richard D. James, these are probably worth the price of admission. The jam you just heard is all in an Aphex Twin tuning. He gave us 6, and that's the very first one that comes in those 6. I don't think I can really dive into the microtonal stuff in this video because that's gonna take up a whole nother video's worth of time. Suffice to say, microtuning is incredibly hard. It's like trying to speak a different language, but it's also really invigorating, and I have to say that is something that really sets this synth apart from other synths. As you may have noticed, the Monologue is kind of an odd duck. Features like microtuning, ring modulation, and the fact that you can use the sequencer to modulate 4 parameters at the same time, all of that points to this being kind of a more advanced monosynth. At the same time, it still feels a little bit like a toy. Because you have that simplified envelope section, you only get one LFO with limited destinations, and the fact that the sequencer is only 16 steps. With that said, this synth in the right hands is a deadly weapon. My verdict in this trial by Synth is not a toy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. As a bonus, I created a sample pack of all the different sounds that I recorded from the Monologue. If you're interested, it's going to be available on my Patreon if you want to join, or if you just want to show some love to the channel. Any support is welcome, whether that's a like or a comment or whatever. I just hope y'all are having fun watching these videos. Stay positive, stay cool, stay creative, and go have some fun, go play with some knobs and make some bleeps and bloops.